October. The heating turned on, and almost immediately, the skin started changing. Tightness, flaking, the feeling like the skin shrank. You apply cream, better for an hour or two, then the same again. A different cream, oil, serum with hyaluronic acid. Better, but not for long. And so on until April, every winter. Today, as a dermatologist, I'll explain why external products don't fully solve winter dryness, what happens to skin in conditions of dry air and low temperatures, and why hyaluronic acid serum works differently than a cream. Let me start with how this feels, because winter skin dryness is a very specific and very recognizable experience. First week of heating. Skin became a little drier, but tolerable. Then worsening accelerates faster. Face tightens by evening. Hands are rough despite cream. Shins flake, especially after a shower. Some notice that skin started reacting to familiar products. The same toner used in summer now stings or dries. You have several creams already. Morning. One, light. Evening. Another, rich, nourishing. Sometimes oil on top. It helps, but exactly while you're in a warm room. Go out into cold air, chapping. Return, tightening again. Every year the same. Started in October, will end in April. This has firmly entered the part of the habitual and inevitable winter scenario. Apparently, I have that kind of skin. This isn't the case. This kind of skin isn't a skin type. This is a predictable reaction to specific conditions, which has specific solutions. There are several characteristic stories I hear every autumn. First story. Skin was always normal, until 35, until 40, and then winters became harder. Skin that previously survived autumn calmly now reacts sharply and for a long time. The person doesn't understand what happened. I use the same creams as before. Why suddenly? Second story. The person lives in a city with central heating. All winter, the air in the apartment is 20 to 22 degrees, humidity 10 to 15%. These are approximately the conditions of the Sahara Desert. No cream can compensate such aggressive, round-the-clock water loss from skin with such air humidity. Third story. The person drinks a lot, eats well, leads a healthy lifestyle, but skin still suffers in winter. Is surprised because they thought internal factors were in order. But the point is that with reduced hyaluronic acid synthesis in the dermis, no amount of water consumed ensures sufficient moisture retention in skin. Fourth story. The person bought a serum with hyaluronic acid. Expensive, good. The first days were excellent. Then, dryness again. Begins to be disappointed in hyaluronic acid as such. But the problem isn't in the product, but in the fact that external hyaluronic acid only works on the surface. The depth of the dermis, where the main moisture reserve is, isn't restored from the surface. All these people have one thing in common. They're trying to solve the problem from the outside, when the cause is inside. There's another story that occurs less often but is important. A woman after menopause notices that skin became dry not only in winter, but also in summer. This isn't just a seasonal reaction, this is a structural change. Reduction of estrogen leads to a sharp reduction in hyaluronic acid and collagen synthesis in the dermis. Exactly in this period, internal support becomes especially relevant because external products can't compensate structural changes in the dermis. Now, the mechanism. I'll explain as a dermatologist, precisely and systematically. Let me start with the basics. Hyaluronic acid is not simply a moisturizing component in cream. This is a fundamental molecule of skin connective tissue. It constitutes a significant part of the dermal extracellular matrix, that same gel that gives skin elasticity and retains water. One hyaluronic acid molecule can retain water molecules weighing approximately 1,000 times its own weight. This makes it the main skin reservoir. While there's sufficient hyaluronic acid in the dermis, skin is firm, well moisturized, and softly responds to any external conditions. First mechanism, reduction of hyaluronic acid synthesis with age. Hyaluronic acid is synthesized by dermal fibroblasts, cells that create and maintain the connective tissue framework of the skin. At 20, Hyaluronic acid concentration in skin is approximately twice as high as at 40. With this, synthesis reduction proceeds gradually and imperceptibly. That's exactly why many people notice a noticeable worsening of winter skin tolerance not at 30, but at 35 or 40, before that compensatory resources were sufficient. Then, not. After 40, the reduction becomes significant. That's exactly why skin that easily survived winters in youth becomes increasingly vulnerable with age. Not because there's less cream, but because the internal reservoir has decreased. With this, it's important to understand. This isn't just a cosmetic problem. Reduction of hyaluronic acid in the dermis affects elasticity, healing speed, and barrier properties. This is a structural change. There's a characteristic sign of reduced dermal hyaluronic acid content visible yourself. If you lightly pinch skin on the back of your hand and release, at young age, skin straightens almost instantly. With age, with hyaluronic acid reduction, straightening slows down. This isn't a disease symptom. This is a marker of dermis structural condition. Second mechanism. What happens to skin in winter at a physical level? Winter creates double stress for skin. From outside, cold air contains less moisture. Low temperatures slow skin metabolism, including hyaluronic acid synthesis and cell renewal. Sharp cold to warm transitions destroy the surface lipid barrier. Inside rooms, central heating reduces air humidity to 10 to 20%. At such humidity level, skin loses water by transepidermal diffusion several times faster than at normal air humidity of 50 to 60%. No cream can fully compensate such a rate of loss, especially if internal moisture reserves are insufficient. There's an important practical point. Transepidermal water loss in low humidity conditions is especially intense at night, while you sleep in a warm, dry room for several hours in a row. That's exactly why a humidifier in the bedroom gives the greatest effect. It protects skin in the most vulnerable period, nighttime exposure to dry, warm air. Third mechanism. Why external hyaluronic acid doesn't fully solve the problem. Here's the key understanding that changes the approach. Hyaluronic acid molecules in cream and serum compositions have a relatively large molecular weight. They don't penetrate through the epidermis into the dermis. They work on the surface, creating a film that temporarily retains water. This is useful and it works, but only while the film is in place. There is low molecular weight hyaluronic acid for external application. It penetrates deeper into the epidermis. But even it doesn't reach the dermis in therapeutically significant quantities. The dermis is 3 to 4 millimeters from the skin surface, fundamentally too deep for any external application. That's exactly why the oral route is significantly more effective for dermal influence. The main skin reservoir, the dermis, not the epidermis surface. The dermis contains 80% of all skin water, and exactly here is the hyaluronic acid store that determines real hydration level. Delivering anything to the dermis through external application is extremely difficult. That's exactly why cosmetic products effectively work with surface hydration, but fundamentally can't restore the dermal reserve. Oral hyaluronic acid enters the bloodstream and distributes through tissues, including the dermis. This is a fundamentally different delivery route. Fourth mechanism. How oral hyaluronic acid works. Skepticism often arises here. Won't a molecule taken internally be digested in the gastrointestinal tract? Partially, yes. But enzymes partially break down the hyaluronic acid molecule into fragments, and exactly low molecular weight fragments are biologically active. These fragments are absorbed into the bloodstream and produce two effects. First, direct. They embed in the dermis and work as additional water-retaining molecules. Second, stimulating. Hyaluronic acid fragments are signaling molecules for fibroblasts. They stimulate fibroblasts to synthesize their own hyaluronic acid, meaning oral intake doesn't just add molecules, it activates their production. This fundamentally distinguishes oral hyaluronic acid from other methods, for example, from injections. Injections add hyaluronate directly to tissue. This is fast and targeted. Oral intake acts systemically, through the bloodstream, gradually stimulating own synthesis. This works more slowly but affects the entire skin in general. Systemically, not individual zones point-wise. According to clinical studies data, regular oral hyaluronic acid intake for 6 to 12 weeks reliably increases skin hydration, reduces transepidermal water loss, and improves elasticity indicators. Exactly such a period is needed for structural changes in the dermis to become subjectively and objectively noticeable. This is important to understand even before starting intake, so as not to be disappointed after a week. The dermis is living tissue that rebuilds slowly. Quick effect from an external cream is explained by it working on the surface, immediately visible. Deep changes require time, but are more sustainable. Fifth mechanism, the role of piperine in bioavailability. Piperine, the active component of black pepper, is a powerful bioavailability enhancer. It inhibits liver and intestinal enzymes that destroy active substances during first pass. Combined use of piperine with other substances significantly increases their absorption. In the case of hyaluronic acid, piperine slows its degradation during absorption, allowing more active fragments to reach the bloodstream. That's exactly why the combination of hyaluronic acid with black pepper extract in one capsule isn't a random combination, but a specially substantiated pharmaceutical solution for increasing effectiveness. For scale of understanding, studies show piperine can increase certain substances' bioavailability by 20 to 30% and more. That's exactly why it became a standard component of many nutraceutical formulas, especially those where the active substance absorbs poorly on its own. Now about mistakes. The most typical approaches to winter skin dryness that don't give full results. Mistake 1. Solving the problem only from outside. Creams, serums, oils. This is the right and necessary part of care. But with systemic dermal hyaluronic acid deficiency, no external hydration will restore the dermal reserve. This is like watering a plant from outside when the roots are dry. External care? Necessary. But without internal support, it works as temporary coating, not a solution. A simple analogy. If a pipe is leaking, you can constantly wipe water from the floor. This helps, but doesn't eliminate the cause. External care with structural hyaluronic acid deficiency is exactly this situation. Continue wiping and simultaneously take care of the pipe. Mistake 2. Applying hyaluronic acid serum to dry skin in a dry room. This is one of the most frequent mistakes in skincare in winter. Hyaluronic acid is a humectant. It attracts water from the environment. If air is dry, it begins pulling water from the skin's lower layers, intensifying dryness. Rule: hyaluronic serum is applied only on slightly damp skin, necessarily sealed with an occlusive cream on top. In dry winter air without an occlusive, it can worsen the situation. Mistake 3. Washing with hot water. Hot water dissolves intercellular lipids, exactly those that retain water in the stratum corneum. After washing with hot water, skin loses its protective barrier for several hours. Combined with dry winter air, this many times accelerates moisture loss. Warm water instead of hot, and applying moisturizer within the first 3 minutes after washing. 2 most practical steps. Mistake 4. Ignoring air humidity. If apartment humidity is 10 to 15%, skin will dry out with any care, just a little more slowly. An air humidifier in the bedroom, a direct therapeutic tool, not a luxury. Normal humidity of 40 to 60% reduces transepidermal water loss by 2 to 3 times. Without solving this question, any care works only halfway. Mistake 5. Expecting fast result from internal support. Oral hyaluronic acid works cumulatively. First changes, skin starts tightening less, flaking less, many notice in 3 to 4 weeks. Sustainable effect in 2 to 3 months. That's exactly why it's desirable to start intake before the heating season, in late September or October. Starting in January when skin is already suffering, improvement will happen, but more slowly. Here's a simple rule. Start oral hyaluronic acid when putting on an autumn jacket. This is a convenient memory anchor. Wardrobe change coincides with the start of skin winter preparation. Mistake 6. Considering external and internal approaches as mutually exclusive. This is the either/or error. The optimal approach to winter dryness: layered. Outside humectant plus occlusive. Inside oral hyaluronic acid. Indoors an air humidifier. Each of these levels covers its part of the problem. Only external care, insufficient with structural deficiency. Only internal, slowly without surface support. Together, synergy. Now, what actually works with winter dryness? First, external care with the correct scheme. Washing with a gentle product without sodium lauryl sulfate. Warm water, not hot. Immediately after, while skin is slightly damp, application of hyaluronic acid serum. On top, cream with occlusive components. Cetyl alcohol, lanolin, dimethicone. Exactly this order. Humectant under an occlusive. Ensures real moisture retention on the surface, not its evaporation. Another practical step often ignored. Evening care denser than morning. At night, there's no makeup layer, no sun protection filter, and skin is open to nourishing components. A richer cream or oil at night. This is correct use of nighttime hours for restoration. Second, humidity management in the room. A bedroom humidifier brings humidity to 40 to 50%. This isn't an optional measure. This is a basic condition for any work with winter dryness. Without this step, external and internal care will give half the possible result. A simple hygrometer will show the real picture. Most people are surprised finding 12 to 15% with heating on. Third, oral hyaluronic acid as dermal support. This is a fundamentally different work level. Not with skin surface, but with the dermis. Exactly there is the main moisture reserve. Exactly there the main reduction of hyaluronic acid concentration with age and under aggressive external conditions occurs. Oral hyaluronic acid replenishes this deficiency and stimulates own synthesis through signaling mechanisms. An important point about the systemic approach. Oral hyaluronic acid works not only with skin, it distributes to joints, to mucous membranes. That's exactly why some people notice that with regular intake, joints crack less in winter, and nasal and eye mucous membranes dry out less. This is the same mechanism, replenishing hyaluronic acid reserve in different tissues. About the specific product, in the next section. Fourth, barrier protection outdoors. A protective cream or balm before going out in frost, an obligatory step. Exactly temperature changes and wind destroy the surface lipid barrier most sharply. Separate hand protection, gloves in frost plus nourishing cream at night. Hand skin is especially vulnerable in winter. Very thin stratum corneum, frequent washing, constant contact with cold air. Another underappreciated point, lip protection. Lip skin is especially thin and has no sebaceous glands. It depends only on external hydration. A lip balm in your pocket during frost. This isn't a whim at all, but basic protective care preventing cracks and inflammation. Fifth, normalize nutrition with emphasis on omega-3 and antioxidants. Omega-3 fatty acids, structural components of skin cell membranes. With their deficiency, skin loses moisture faster. Fatty marine fish, flaxseed oil, walnuts, sources. Vitamin E and antioxidants reduce inflammatory background in skin and protect its structure. This is a cumulative effect, but with chronic winter dryness, an important part of the system. There's a useful practice for assessing skin condition, photographing the same areas, cheekbones, hands, in the same lighting at the beginning of November and end of February. This helps objectively see dynamics and understand what really works in your care and what doesn't. Sixth, start preparation before the season. This is the most common mistake in the other direction, not tactical but strategic. You should start oral hyaluronic acid and build up care in September to October, even before heating starts. 6 to 8 weeks before the main load starts, skin manages to build up the dermal reserve. That's exactly when winter is tolerated significantly more easily. Now specifically, about hyaluronic acid in capsules. I'll explain as a dermatologist why exactly the oral form is relevant for winter dryness. The main active component, hyaluronic acid, 57 milligrams per daily dose. 57 milligrams. This is a dosage close to what is used in most clinical studies with positive results. Most such studies show reliable skin hydration increase with a daily dose of 40 to 120 milligrams. Form, sodium hyaluronate. This is a salt of hyaluronic acid, standard and well-studied form for oral use. Sodium hyaluronate has somewhat higher water solubility than free acid. This facilitates absorption. Second component, black pepper fruit extract, 5 milligrams. This is a source of piperine, one of the most studied bioavailability enhancers. Mechanism: piperine inhibits cytochrome P4503A4 and P-glycoprotein, enzymes responsible for breaking down many substances during first pass through the intestine and liver. 5 milligrams of piperine is sufficient for significant absorption enhancement. Exactly by this principle, piperine is included in curcumin, coenzyme Q10 formulas, and other poorly absorbed bioactive substances. This is already standard practice in nutraceutical development. Combined use of hyaluronic acid with piperine is a solution to a real pharmacological problem. Without piperine, oral hyaluronate bioavailability is low. With it, significantly higher. That's exactly why the combination in one capsule is better than 2 separate products. 60 capsules at a daily dose of 2 capsules. This is 30 days. Minimum course for results evaluation, 6 to 8 weeks. Optimal course, 3 to 4 months for sustainable effect. This means 2 to 3 bottles for a full heating season, a reasonable calculation. There's data that people taking oral hyaluronic acid for several consecutive seasons notice improvement from season to season. This is consistent with the mechanism: stimulation of own fibroblast synthesis, a cumulative process. The longer the signal is maintained, the more sustainable the restoration. How to take: with food. Fat-soluble pepper extract components absorb better with dietary fats present. At the same time every day, concentration stability is important for cumulative effect. When to expect results? First, skin starts tightening less and reacting less sharply to dry air, usually in 3 to 4 weeks. Second, visible hydration improvement, less flaking, in 6 to 8 weeks. Third, stable change in skin quality, in 3 to 4 months. What's the difference from hyaluronic acid in serum? The serum works on the surface, temporarily dependent on ambient humidity. The oral form works in the dermis, systemically, at the layer level where the main water reserve is located. This isn't a replacement. These are 2 different levels of the same task. With winter dryness, it's optimal to use both tools: surface, for barrier protection, and systemic, for replenishing the dermal reserve. There's a simple way to assess whether your skin needs only external care or also internal support. If after applying cream, skin looks and feels good for more than 4 to 6 hours, the barrier works and external care is sufficient. If after an hour or 2 there's tightening again, this is a signal that the problem is deeper, in the dermis, and internal support is needed. Who is this especially relevant for? People over 35 in whom hyaluronic acid synthesis is already naturally decreasing. Those with pronounced winter dryness despite regular care. People with normal or combination skin that becomes dry and sensitive in winter. And those who want to solve the problem at the structural level, from inside, rather than just managing symptoms from outside. Link to hyaluronic acid in capsules, 57 milligrams with piperine, 60 capsules, in the description of this video. https://www.iherb.com/PR/advanced-clinicals-1-75-FL-OZ-54555. Advanced Clinicals Hyaluronic Acid Serum, 1.75 fluid ounces, provides intensive hydration and supports skin's own hyaluronic acid production, formulated for deep barrier support. Winter skin dryness is not a verdict and not just that kind of skin. These are predictable reactions to predictable conditions: dry air, cold, reduction of hyaluronic acid synthesis. And exactly because the conditions are predictable, you can prepare for them. There's an observation that helps change the attitude. People who start working with winter dryness systematically, humidifier, revised care, oral support, already by the first or second winter notice that it was significantly easier. Not because the climate changed, but because they changed the approach. The difference between those who suffer every winter and those who tolerate it normally often isn't in skin type, but in whether they work only from outside or both outside and inside. 3 concrete steps for next winter and for this one, if it hasn't ended yet. A bedroom air humidifier. This is the first and fastest step. Review external care scheme, humectant on damp skin, occlusive on top, and evening care denser than morning. Add oral hyaluronic acid with piperine as systemic dermal support. Link in the description. Skin shouldn't suffer every October, November, December, January, February, and March. This problem has a specific and working solution, from outside and inside simultaneously.